there are very, very clear and distinct and powerful negative sales stereotypes out there. One of the reasons that that happens is if you think about some of the biggest purchases you make in your personal life, and if it doesn't go well, the memory of that pain or of that financial loss and the heartache of that financial loss stays with us for a long time. Some of the most junior or low tenured salespeople are real estate agents and car salespeople. So in the biggest purchases in our life, we're dealing with some of the most novice salespeople. That's not a good match. I didn't set out to be in sales, but sales sort of came to me, and I found jumping into sales was super easy. And all I had to do was really look at the relationships in my personal life and say, hey, what makes these relationships, the good ones, work well? And it was
All right, Andy. I know we were chatting a little bit, but I wanted to say thanks again for taking the time out of your day to chat with us and chat with the listeners. And really just wanted to give you a chance to start off by telling us what it is that you do right now.
Thanks, Jordan. It's great to be with all of you and get a chance to share with your listeners today. You know, for me, I spent 20 years in the healthcare business, so medical device sales, marketing, general management. I led U.S. teams in sales and marketing, and then global teams as well, all the way from Canada to Latin America. I had an opportunity to launch a coronary stent. It's like a plumbing device that opens up arteries in the heart. And I guess we did all right, and we did do well. And they said, "Hey, all right, Andy, you have an opportunity now. Either we'll send you over to Japan as a marketing director, or if you want to head up to Canada to do sales there, you pick." And it was awesome. And I said, "You know what? I really want to do sales," and so I became a national sales manager in Canada. And ever since I started selling in Canada, I really have had an affinity for what great salespeople do and the skills that they have. And so, fast forward many years to about 2019, I said, you know what? I've worked in corporate America for 17 plus years, and the further up I go and climb the ladder, the less I enjoy sort of the work I'm doing. And we can unpack the reasons why, if that'd be helpful for your audience in a moment. But I said, you know what? I'm going to start my own business and become a company of one, follow just like you, sort of an entrepreneurial pathway. And for the last 4 years, North Hall Partners is my business, and it's sales and leadership training. Work with business teams, sales teams, helping them upskill, and then also executive coaching, all the way from retiring professional athletes who are transitioning into a new phase of their life to executives running a multi-billion-dollar business, getting to help them bring out their best. So that's what I've been doing the last 4 years. Super passionate about it, and super excited to be chatting with you today.
Yeah, so there's a lot to that, a lot to unravel there. What and you kind of mentioned it, like you were moving up the ladder, but that you realized, was it just the fulfillment thing? Like, what made you say, "No, I want to kind of go back to doing this myself," and focused on the sales piece of it? What was it about that corporate world that you didn't enjoy?
Yeah, Jordan, it's a great question. And I use this example actually, so I'll try to visually illustrate what I go through in terms of leadership development training that I do with companies, is think about a visual of a ladder. And when you start off, let's say in a sales role, you're an individual contributor, and you're probably in the lower part of that ladder in terms of the corporate hierarchy. But more importantly, I always think about that ladder as your customer orientation. Which customer are you serving in every role that you're in? And so if you're a salesperson, you're serving the customer who's buying your products or services, the end user. And your customer is the buyer. It's the person who you are contracting with. And I always ask people in those roles, do you love selling to that customer? If the answer is yes, hey, it's like, let's keep doing more of that. As you move up the ladder, your customer changes. So the further up you go, you have more responsibilities now to the owner customer, and that could be in a publicly traded company, the shareholder customer, or the family that owns the business. And so you're selling to a different customer the further up you go, from to a sales manager, a sales director, VP of marketing, executive, general manager, senior leader, CEO. Your customer changes, and every step of that ladder that you take in your career, I just want people to ask themselves, do you love selling to the customer in your current role or the role that you're about to be promoted in? And for me, when I was getting towards the top of that ladder, I was only serving the shareholder customer at Siemens, for example. And it's a different sales job. It's a different constituency. I really wanted to get back to the end user customer. That's why I started my own business, so I could train and help salespeople, sales managers, business people, marketers upskill. And so now I'm selling and serving the end user customer again. And that's really where my sweet spot is and what I love to do.
You've talked about the terms, sales and then marketers.
Mhm.
How do you define the difference between the two? What is the difference between my marketing efforts and my true sales efforts in business?
Yeah, I think they're one and the same. I'll use a military example. May not be the best example, but I'll use it anyway. Is that the marketing team's like the Air Force, and the sales team is like the Marines. And so usually the Air Force provides a view from 25, 30,000 feet. They go in, they monitor, they do recon, and then the Marines come onto the beach to move the line forward. And you sort of think about that and apply that into business. The marketing teams they have responsibility for building the brand, for creating the messaging, the strategies, the segmentation approach, or which targets we're going to go after, which accounts we're going to go after, training the sales team, um, creating objection handling, FAQs, getting the social digital media stuff all done right. And you can sort of see that that is going out to the masses at a little bit of a higher level. And then the salesperson, that individual's job is to go into the account, sit down with, engage with the customer, and try to persuade and convince that customer to say yes to the salesperson and ultimately yes to the company's products and services. So together, the great organizations have this wonderful dance between marketers and salespeople, and companies that need a little bit of help, you can see it because their marketing and sales team is a little bit disjointed, or one's going one way while the other's going the other way. You want it coordinated, but they have very different and distinct roles.
No, I appreciate that explanation. I want to you how did you get into sales as a career? I want to take a step back and say, what was it something like as a childhood growing up, like, hey, I like talking to people, I like this. What was it that made you say, like, I could do that for a living? Because I think a lot of people have that fear of, like, somewhat of a negative connotation to it.
Yes.
But how did you know that that's something you could do?
Yeah, and I'm going to answer your question, but let's dig into the reasons why people have that negative connotation first. There are very, very clear and distinct and powerful negative sales stereotypes out there. And, Hollywood doesn't help us with some of those negative sales stereotypes. If anyone has seen Glenn Ross, Alec Baldwin, his very famous monologue to the salespeople where he's really beating them down, trying to motivate them. That makes salespeople look really, really weak. Tommy Boy with Chris Farley selling Sandusky auto part brake pads. A goofy salesperson, Leonardo DiCaprio and Wolf of Wall Street. Not the kind of salesperson that makes the rest of us look good. The snake oil salesman, the horse trader, all these negative sales stereotypes are out there. And one of the reasons that that happens is if you think about some of the biggest purchases you make in your personal life, and being in home services, Jordan, you'd appreciate this, right? When we build a home, invest in a home, do a remodeling to a home, those are big ticket items. Buying a car is a big ticket item. Those are highly material. And if it doesn't go well, the memory of that pain or of that financial loss and the heartache of that financial loss stays with us for a long time. Some of the most junior or low tenured salespeople are real estate agents and car salespeople.
Mm.
So, in the biggest purchases in our life, we're dealing with some of the most novice salespeople. That's not a good match. And so, obviously, the best real estate agents and the best car sales people, they do incredibly well. But we put a lot of faith for the biggest purchases in the hands of people who haven't really sold that much, and that can also fuel these negative sales stereotypes if it doesn't go well. So I didn't set out to be in sales, but sales sort of came to me, and I found jumping into sales was super easy. And all I had to do was really look at the relationships in my personal life and say, hey, what makes these relationships, the good ones, work well? And it was always same three things: connection, communication, and cooperation. And if you are able to connect with another person, hey, we have a lot in common. If you're able to communicate effectively back and forth and cooperate to solve big problems together, those are usually some of the closest relationships we have in our personal life. Well, great. Just do that with customers, connect with them. communicate effectively with them, help them solve their problems through cooperation, and you're going to build up long-term relationships that are valuable to both parties. And that's always been my approach. That's what I see the best salespeople doing. And when you think about it that way, a transition to sales, I think is pretty simple and straightforward. Just have to overcome those negative sales stereotypes on the front end.
No, for sure. But was it your personality type? So taking that step back to like, what do you think you had the personality for it, or was it something you learned? Like, how did you develop those skills?
Yeah, I think there is some learning along the way. I think, look, there's always this question out there: are extroverts or the very outgoing people better salespeople, or are introverts the quieter people salespeople? Most people say, well, extroverts, it's that big charismatic individual, that big personality that woos people in. Yeah, some of those are great salespeople, but often introverts who are great listeners and are really patient listeners can really digest and understand what their customer needs and then build solutions for that individual based on their needs. And so I think my approach is, I would say I'm sort of in the middle between extrovert and introvert, but I just take a very active listening role. I'm very curious to ask more questions about why their business is doing well, why it's not doing well, how can I help, what are things that keep you up late at night, just being really curious, and then just wanting and really with a passion, wanting people to be successful and to try to help them do that. And if it's a medical product that I used to sell, or today, if it's negotiation training, presentation skills training, executive coaching, then that would be a service that I really want them to use. And I get excited and jazzed if it does help them. And that is certainly the intention. So I think curiosity, I think great listening skills, and then, yeah, just being comfortable with people and also being comfortable, Jordan, to hear the word no, or, hey, I love what you're doing, Jordan, but right now is not the right time for a new HVAC. So I can't get there right now. But you know what, when I need it in a couple months, I'm going to give you a call first.
I want to dive into those because you talk about those three things in your book as well, with the connection, communication, and
Mhm.
cooperation. I want to take some time to kind of dive into them individually. When you think about connection, is that truly just that, hey, this is that first impression? Is it finding common ground? What does that look like whenever we're having a conversation with a customer?
Yeah, great question. So the science tells us that we have 4 seconds, a first and lasting impression with a customer. And what that means is we have 1,000, 2, 1,000, 3, 1,000, 4, 1,000. That's as long as it takes for a customer to say, hey, you know what? I sort of like this Jordan guy, or I don't. You get that warm or cool feeling. And so when it comes to connection, the first thing you want to do right away is just smile, say the customer's name, be high energy at that moment, be engaged. Hey, Jordan, my name's Andy Olen. It is so nice to meet you. Thank you for spending some time with me today. Right? Smile, name, that's it, 4 seconds, but that's already starting that connection process. And then what I like to teach people and work with people on is something called the equal sign connection. And so an equal sign connection, think of it this way, is like, if you're traveling around the country, and do you have a favorite sports team, Jordan?
Probably the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Okay, Pittsburgh Steelers. So probably, right, because you're in the Carolinas, if you were to be walking down the street and you see someone, or you're at a restaurant, you see someone like decked out in Pittsburgh stuff, that's probably not the norm
Right.
in your neck of the woods. But it's like, oh, I'm going to go talk to that person because we have something in common. I'm a Pittsburgh Steeler fan. You're a Pittsburgh Steeler fan. We have an equal sign connection. And so when we find things of shared values, our kids go to the same school. We went to the same university. We grew up in the same area. We go on holiday or vacation to the same place. When we find those things in common with a customer, then all of a sudden trust rises really, really quickly. So remember, customers, when they see us and they know we're salespeople, that's when all those negative sales stereotypes kick in. They don't trust us right away. So we have to earn that trust by managing the first 4 seconds of the first meeting, doing that thoughtfully, and then trying to find this equal sign connection, something you have in common with that customer that will accelerate trust and get you well on your way to getting the process going for a relationship, and relationship ultimately to hopefully transacting some business.
No, it's pretty cool that I never heard that 4 second thing. I mean, obviously we know the first impressions matter, but you wouldn't think that it's
Do.
that quick. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I was surprised with that too. And it's not a conscious choice someone's making, like, ooh, I just met Andy. I don't like him or I do like him, but it's
Hmm.
a feeling you get. And so I always say this to teams that I train, sales teams. It's like, hey, if you're delivering your best and you're ready to go in those first 4 seconds, and your competitor's not, advantage to you. And in sales, sometimes getting those small advantages are really important. Now, I would also share with your listeners, always remain authentic and genuine to your true self, right? So, hey, these first 4 seconds, do I have to be really scripted and manicured? No, just be yourself, be excited, but, do say the customer's name. If you're excited to see that person, say that you're excited to see that person. Have a question ready. How are you? What have you been up to today? What are your plans for the weekend, right? Engage, and through those questions, you can find those equal sign connections. The equal sign connections then start to build that really critical foundation of trust.
So then when we move to the communication piece, right? And I think that one thing that you talk a lot about, and obviously our skill out is the presentation, but what is that whole aspect of it? Like there's more to the communication, right, than just how we're presenting, or is it just that simple?
Well, yeah. So in communication, a couple things, and we can go back to customers here. So we'll talk about communications, talk a little bit about presenting then as well too, because a lot of people that listen to your show are doing presentations in a boardroom or for customers, and there's that formal sort of art form there, and there's anxiety that goes along with it, as a lot of people don't like to do speaking or public speaking. But in communication, right, I always, just a couple things. First, always be your authentic and genuine self. However, I do disclaim that a little bit, where you have to be aware of the audience. I mean, if you had a pretty crazy weekend at a Steelers game, and with the tailgating went pretty bananas, maybe you weren't feeling so good on Monday morning, you may not want to unpack that whole story with someone that you're just about to talk to about a multi-million-dollar investment in something. It's like, yes, that's genuine and authentic, but it may not be moment appropriate. So be yourself, be engaged. I always like to tell people, think about pronouns, because pronouns are a really important part of communication. So I, we, you, me, they. And what I like to do is, when you first meet a customer, I communicate using the pronoun you as much as possible. How are you? What are your goals for this year? How is your business going? What are the things that keep you up late at night? As we progress more into a relationship, it changes a little bit more to I pronouns. I have an idea on how I think things could be a little bit better with this product, this solution. I have a recommendation for you. I have a proposal for you. And then once you get into longer term relationship, then we, right, we as the team, how do we tackle this problem together? We can do this, right? So just think about your pronouns as you evolve a relationship. So that's just one simple communication best practice. But in terms of presentations, I do think for business people, salespeople, you can make really big changes, positive changes in your career and with customers by being comfortable speaking in front of people.
Mm.
And so, even if it's uncomfortable, I really encourage your listeners to keep at it. I set the goal for everyone that I train and work with to make your next presentation your best. We can always grow, we can always learn, we can always improve. I do, out at learn.andyolen.com, have a 45-minute presentation skills training. It's a small investment, and it's going to give you all the best practices to get you going, hopefully a little bit more confidence. But one acronym that I always want people to use as a checklist for their presentations is POPS, POPS. And that great presenters bring passion. They bring a lot of optimism. They're very well prepared, and they're super self-aware. So POPS, people follow passion, they follow optimism. That's what leaders exude. Preparation, the more you prepare before you present, the more effective you'll be. And then self-awareness is, hey, I'm really good at talking about these things in this format, in this style. And that's how I'm going to do it. I'm not, and if I need help, if I'm in a business and there's an area where the customer's asked for me to present on, but I don't really know it that well, I'm not going to try to fake it. I'm going to bring Jordan with me, so together we can present on this and answer questions, and we're going to do this as a team. And that's really good self-awareness.
Because there's a study that talked about for they ranked people's fears, and the fear of public speaking was above dying. So people would rather die than talk in front of people. And
Let's,
so
yeah.
when you think about that, I mean, you've done talks like at TEDx and things like that. I mean, do you still have that nervousness, or how do people kind of get past that? And I think part of your pops method could be key in that. But how do you suggest that people get past that initial fear or hesitancy to get in front of people?
Yeah. Well, if there's anyone out there listening that would rather die than present, give me a call. I'll help you get over that. We'll figure that one out together because I really would rather have you get up and even have not a great presentation than something else, and to really overcome the fear. And Jordan, that's your question: is how do you overcome that fear? One of the things, there are all these cliches out there that I'm not going to go into on how people suggest presenters think about the audience and whatnot, but most 99% of the people in an audience are rooting for and want the presenter to do a great job. And so when you humanize the experience, even by saying, hey, I don't do this often, I'm a little bit nervous, I'll give it my best shot, you're bringing that audience in to be your partner in this. So the empathy that comes from an audience, because everyone or most people in the audience, they don't want to be up there presenting, so they're very empathetic and compassionate for the presenter. Now, sometimes in a boardroom presentation, when the stakes are super high and you're presenting a multi-million dollar, transaction or recommendation, there may not be as much empathy. There might be a lot of questioning, but there you're just going to probably be fairly seasoned in doing it. So, but let's talk about for those people that, don't like doing it, but maybe have to do it in their job, is just remember, the more human you can be and even express that a little bit of nervousness. Hey, I'm excited to do this, but I am nervous. I'll give it my best shot. Just saying a line like that, one, it puts you at ease because you're going to see this warm body language from the audience. And what they're going to usually do is say, you killed it. What are you talking about? You were nervous. Sometimes the most nervous presenters are also the ones who really take a lot of time to prepare. And if they put that preparation in, they kill it and in a great way, and they get the praise. I just did a presentation training down in Atlanta. And one of the guys that got up says, I don't present a lot. I hate doing it. I don't think I'm very good at it. And he dazzled all of us. And we're like, all right, we're never believing you again. That was awesome. Keep doing it. You're great. And you could just see him light up. It's like, okay, I got it. So just remember that the audience is very empathetic. And sometimes just as a presenter, say that you're nervous. Say that I'm excited but nervous, and I'm going to do my best with it. And it just gives you a moment to take a breath. I think that's the other real good tip too, is do some breathing before you get up there. If those nerves are high, some box breathing is good. Inhale for a 4 count, hold for a 4 count, exhale for a 4 count, hold for a 4 count. Navy SEAL operators use box breathing. Special ops folks use box breathing before they go out on operations and missions, just to calm everything down. So that's a very good sort of meditative thing to do a few minutes before you get up there. And the more prepared you are, the more you're going to get it. But yes, to answer your question, I get nervous before every presentation. Why? Because I want to do really well. And I think like great lead singers and bands, they get nervous before they step out on stage because they take it seriously and they want to do well and they want to dazzle the audience. And so, yeah, I think that's totally normal.
Why is that skill so important, not only for salespeople, but for anybody that wants to kind of move up the ladder? Why is that skill of being able to communicate effectively just so important?
Yeah, because think about it in business, right? To move up, by moving up, you're going to be making bigger decisions in the business that have more of an impact on the business, and you're going to probably be managing more and more people. So your decisions and the way that you carry yourself impact not just maybe a customer, but maybe 100 people that work in your organization. And so as you move up, if you can clearly communicate the direction of where we're going, the reason why we're doing it, and why everyone should be optimistic that this is the right way to go and then motivated to go. What a powerful thing that is to bring and galvanize that whole organization to march together, to execute together. And so a good communicator who can thoughtfully and clearly present can create faster and better change for a business. Also, it's a signal in terms of career elevation. If you're a structured communicator, it signals to leaders around you and to your superiors that you're probably also a structured thinker and that your critical thinking skills are good, your organizational skills are good. And so it's a very clear and present signal that if you can do this structured communication or presenting well, you probably can do these other business critical or mission critical items well also. So it's a very, very big confidence builder for not only the leader, but for the leaders around that leader.
That makes a lot of sense. And as we move to the cooperation piece of your trilogy, um, is that really just based on like that, the negotiations with the customer? What is the cooperation piece of it?
Yeah. So cooperation, the word cooperate, if you break it apart, operate means to work and co means together. So it literally means to work together. And if you think about the evolution of human beings, let's go back to our ancestors many, 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 many hundreds, thousands of years ago, um, maybe even more than thousands of years ago, the cave people. And, they lived in a cave because it created security. But at some point, a cave person said, I want to go live out there, out on the prairie. And said, you know what, though, I can't do it alone. I need to bring other people with me. So when the group is sleeping, I can be awake and protect them. And then when I'm sleeping, they can be out hunting or gathering or doing whatever it is. And so that was cooperation. And so survival depended on people cooperating with each other as we've evolved. So it's part of our DNA. And it really is to work together to solve problems. And one of the areas where I see cooperation in business and salespeople and customers being so important is in negotiations. Because a negotiation, by its very definition, is to settle on terms, to come together to solve a problem. Sounds like cooperation. So if the salesperson is using a cooperative negotiation style with the customer, and I teach a style called yes if negotiating. Yes, I can do this for you if you can do this for me. Yes, I can give you a price discount on this product if you buy two. So it's a trading paradigm, trading like baseball cards. If you traded baseball cards as a kid or other things, Pokemon cards, this is a trading and cooperative paradigm where I'll trade something for you, Jordan, if you are willing to give me something back in return. And so that is an example of how in business and specifically in negotiations with a customer or internally as well too, you can trade value for value back and forth and have both parties come out feeling really good about the outcome.
But we've all encountered those people and customers that are just kind of relentless in their. I think it's sometimes just because they just want to do the negotiation piece. So, like, how do you handle that kind of encounter?
Yeah, I still use yes
So,
if.
okay.
I do. And look, I mean, there are some people, I call it the dark side of negotiations, who negotiate using conflict, chaos, and crisis, where they're going to try to beat you down. They're not going to be very nice to you. And that's purposeful. Now, they might be a curmudgeon or they might be a little bit difficult to deal with. Might be a little bit of a personality trait, but it is, to your point, and you're spot on, is that that's intentional. They know that if they try to beat you down, then they're going to try to be able to extract value. However, if you're always responding and say, hey, Jordan, I hear that you're energized about this price point. Yes, I can do that for you if you're also able to do this for me. And if you just keep doing that, the person that's throwing the haymakers and the fireballs at you and the conflict at you is going to recognize that you're not going to fall for that, that you're a pretty savvy negotiator yourself. And the way that they're going to get to where they want to go is by trading back and forth. Always remember, and for your audience as well, if you are dealing with someone who's negotiating with you using that sort of I call them the dark arts of negotiation, or within that dark side of negotiation, fear, anxiety, conflict, chaos, negative judgment, competitiveness as well. If they're doing that with you, they're expending or they're deploying a lot of calories in the negotiation. That's a signal they want to buy from you, because they wouldn't waste that time or that energy if they weren't serious about engaging with you.
Mm.
So if they're doing that, smile on the inside. That's like, okay, we're going to get a deal done. However, I'm going to trade back and forth. I'm not just going to acquiesce and say yes to their demands. I'm going to say, yes, I can do that. Jordan, I'd be happy to do that if you can also give me more volume in return. Yes, I can do that if we sign this deal today. So that's it. You start to condition them very quickly, and the negative negotiator will over time become a cooperative negotiator because they see how you're conditioning them, and that's the only way they're going to get to a great deal.
That's pretty cool insight. I never thought about it. Like, if they're putting all that effort in, that's a sign of something.
Oh, welcome it. Absolutely. It's like, oh, why are they so fired up with me? Because they want to do a deal. If they didn't care, they would ghost me. They would just not, they wouldn't burn the calories. So if
Right.
you're in the game, good, no problem. And just keep using that yes, if approach. My TED Talk out on YouTube is a great place to learn in 13 minutes some of the yes, if styles. If you want to go deep as a business person, learn.andyolen.com has some online content as well. That will get you well on your way to becoming a more empowered, confident negotiator.
So, Andy, we've talked about the specifics from a salesperson's perspective. I kind of want to look at it from if I'm a leader of a sales team, or if I have really even just like the organization as a whole, how do we start to think about building a culture of like, everybody here knows how we should effectively communicate with people? How do we set that tone? Does it kind of just start with the leadership being understanding of like, hey, this is how I communicate with you, and that's the expectation when we go out into the world?
Hmm.
This might just be a personal question, but how do we think about it whenever we're wanting to train our team members of,
Yeah.
hey, there's reasons why we want to be effective in what we're saying and be empathetic to our customers.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and that's a lot of training that I do. And you know what a lot of companies do is they do a really, really good job of hiring salespeople and training them on the products, the services of that company. And that they become product experts. They know all about the pros and the cons and the objections they may face, the pricing, the contracting. But not a lot of companies provide, to your point, this is how we engage with customers. This is the communication style or the sales approach that we use. Now, they might do a little bit like with Salesforce.com. This is how we build an opportunity, and this is sort of the administrative work of it. But what we're talking about here today, and what's important for your audience, is that, hey, but still, you got to go out there and ace those first 4 seconds. I would encourage companies to have some role plays for new hires on ensuring that they ace those first 4 seconds, that they have a solid handshake. I know it sounds simple, but a lot of what I do is like simple practices create powerful outcomes. So people don't often evaluate their handshake. Well, let's do that here in sales training because I don't want a poor handshake to lose us the deal. Let's make sure we give each other feedback on something that a customer is never going to give us feedback on. But if we have a bad handshake, Jordan, they're just not going to deal with us the next time because our hand hurt after shaking that person's hand. But to answer your question holistically, it does start with leaders, and the leaders set the tone, and people role model leaders. So one thing I would encourage for the leaders listening to the call here is that I in coaching for executives, what I do is I'm like, hey, when you're running a team meeting, are there any team norms or team guidelines? And a good communication one is when one person's talking, let that person finish their sentence before someone else jumps in. And for me in the boardroom, there was nothing more frustrating than someone making a great comment and then someone over here jumping in and maybe adding something positive, but we don't hear the period in the sentence or the exclamation mark, or maybe they're going to ask us a question. So just respect that person like you would respect a customer to allow them to finish their thought. So that could be a norm in our team meetings and within our culture. We allow people to finish their sentences. Hey, everyone can get on board with that. And what a signal then that sends to everyone else about the power of listening and the respect to the speaker, and take that then out and do the same thing with your customers. And so you can see how a leader with a very simple team norm can start that process. But then, of course, more formally to train people on negotiations, on communications, presentations, for sales and training teams to bring folks in like me or to build that expertise within. That's usually how I see it happening to get it out to the masses at scale.
In my mind, though, that the personal aspect, that 4 second piece, is more important than the product knowledge. Why is it easier to just train on the product knowledge? Why do companies not focus on the interpersonal dynamics?
Yes, it usually the mandate for training is the product excellence
Okay.
piece of it, because that is nuanced. If we were to go to jump in at a company tomorrow, if it's I'm trying to think of selling something. If it's selling, I'm looking at cars outside. So if we were to go join a car dealer, they got to tell us how the Toyotas work or the Hondas or the Mercedes work, whatever it is. So we got to know that, and then we have some personal experience we can probably blend in with that. Um, but yeah, I think it's also just assumed that people know how to engage interpersonally with customers. And when usually the reaction I get from training salespeople is for a very tenured and long-term salesperson, they'd be like, it's been 10 years since I've been reminded about how important these basic things are. The first 4 seconds, the
Hmm.
handshake. Thank you for doing that. So people get away from that. It becomes somewhat routine. You forget about it. And so being reminded of it for the experienced salesperson is really important. And then for someone new to sales, who's never done it before, it's like, okay, I can do that. So it's a confidence builder. It's like that's all it takes. I was talking to someone today trying to break into the medical sales environment. And she's like, and there's a lot of imposter syndrome. I was like, I can't do it. I've never done it before. I'm like, hey, are you in a relationship in your life? I am. What makes a good relationship? Well, we communicate well. We have a lot of similar interests, connection, and we love hanging out and doing things together. It's like, okay, there's probably cooperation in there. Just take all of that and put it to selling, and you can break in. So a lot of what I do is just sort of zooming out on things and just making sure that everyone's got the basics. And you'd be surprised that most companies just, I think, expect people to have it. Most people don't do it religiously and routinely.
What prompted you to write the book? Was it questions from clients? Was it just the thought of like, hey, I want to put down what I've learned over these years of, the skills I've developed? What made you say, I want to put this on paper and be able to share it?
Yeah, great question. I remember it was 2016. I probably started writing the book and published it in 17, 18, somewhere around there. And I had a great opportunity in a global sales role to travel all around the world. And so from Japan to Australia to Germany and China and the US and everything, South America, North America, what I saw consistently was that the great salespeople had these three skills: connection, communication, cooperation. So it didn't matter what culture it was in, it didn't matter what language it was in, it didn't matter really what product you were selling. Ultimately, the great salespeople sold through how well they connected, communicated, and cooperated, and just the relationship equity that they had. At that time, I was in healthcare, so with doctors and procurement agents, and the trust that they had, I'm like, there's something here. So that was what motivated me to say, let's capture it, and then let's just, for myself, remind myself that this is all that it takes. And now a lot of my work and mission is to just share that, and through my podcast, The Sales Warrior Within, is to try to help people recognize that there's a sales warrior within each of us. All you have to do are these couple of simple things, and you can inspire people to say yes to you.
That's an interesting perspective because, like, you'd think culturally, there's so many differences between trying to do a sales presentation, maybe in Japan versus Australia versus the US. But you're saying that those principles were the same everywhere.
The foundational
Yeah.
principles are the same. There is cultural nuance for sure. I work with a very large Korean company, has a huge presence in the United States, and the high tech and Korean presentation styles, and the idea of having a save face in presentations or communication, or sometimes a deference to a leader. And there's a different style in the U.S., so you have to be aware. But at its core, it really comes down to those three things. And then in presentations, is that, does the audience believe in you? And if they believe in you, they probably believe in your idea, your recommendation, your product as well. So, yeah, it's nuanced by culture for sure, but overall, the pillars are the same.
What is, I like to try and give people an actionable takeaway. What's one piece of advice that, and you can tackle this however you want, whether it's somebody that's wanting to break into sales, maybe just starting that sales journey, or someone that's leading an entire sales team or marketing division. What's one actionable piece of advice you'd tell them?
Yeah, I would say let's go back to negotiations. 66% of all salespeople in the studies that I've done with my clients, and these are very tenured, very skilled sales teams in technology, healthcare, banking, elsewhere. 66% have never had a formal negotiation course in their life. So think about that, Jordan. Is like, negotiations in our personal life and in our professional life are some of the most important things we do. We have to solve problems with others, and we may be in different places to solve those problems. My wife and I trying to figure out where we're going to go for the holidays. That's a negotiation. Kids negotiate all the time. Hey, I want to go see my friends. Well, not now. Why not? Why not? Why not? Until you just buckle and give in. You have kids, so you may or may not quite be there yet, but
Yeah.
you will be eventually. They're great negotiators because they're tenacious. But when do we go in grade school, elementary school, university to a negotiations class? We don't. And so it's just expected that we know it. And yet most people are afraid to negotiate. there's a lot of fear in negotiation because they might not be liked or they might be negatively judged. They might lose the negotiation and have some risk in their job or career. So these are anxiety moments. And the advice that I have for people is either in an organization or on your own, find some training, listen to some podcasts, hopefully this one as well, the yes if approach. Start using yes if with family members. Hey, yes, happy to go to Montreal for Christmas this year, where my wife's family's from, if we do Thanksgiving with my family in November in the US. And so, right, just start practicing that. A lot of parents start to use that with their kids. Yes, you can go hang out with your friends if you have your homework done. And so everybody wins. Just try and start that language of yes if negotiating. And that will already start to give you a framework and some confidence on how to do it effectively. And then just some self-education, or if you're in a position as a leader of a sales team or a business team, bring in some negotiation training. If it's me, if it's someone else, bring it in, get people trained so they can be confident, and you just unlock a lot of potential by doing so.
I appreciate that. And that's what's technology has allowed us to find resources everywhere. Like you mentioned, you can just listen to podcasts, you can get audiobooks. Like there's ways to find that information even, without the investment, but sometimes it does help to have that, hey, this person's been there, knows the ways to get it done efficiently. But yeah, I think there's so much available for people that taking those steps is pretty easy nowadays.
Yeah, it is. And with negotiations, with presentations, you can learn to do it fast, gain confidence and skills pretty quickly. I mean, again, I get the luxury of working with a lot of great business people, a lot of great salespeople and marketing teams, and these are very, very talented people. So if you give them a roadmap and give them some simulations and practice, they get it really fast, and they get excited by getting it. It's like new muscle, and it's like, yeah, I can do this now. I can confidently run to that next negotiation. So I totally agree with you. Get out there and discover some things and some tips, tricks, and start to try it at home with family members. And if works for you, keep on using it.
Perfect. Hey, what's the best way for listeners to, reach out, follow along, get in touch, and see what you got going on?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Sales Warrior Within is my podcast, where if you like this style of banter and conversation and these ideas, you can just get it on a regular basis there. And that's available anywhere you consume your podcasts. And then andyolen.com is my website if you want to dig a little bit deeper or get to my online courses that are out there as well. So yeah, those are two good spots.
And we'll put a link to all those things in the show notes. But I can't thank you enough, man. I think that we've had different guests on here talking about sales, but you gave a lot of really cool insights and things that people can take away and start practicing today. So I really appreciate it.
Good. Well, Jordan, I have a question for you. I mean, do you feel more confident yourself as a salesperson? And hopefully you can use some of these things yourself out there?
Yeah, no, I think the 4 second thing definitely going to take away, because I've always known it was actually a basketball coach. Whenever I was in high school, I went on a recruiting visit one time, and this one coach just he's told me that you never get a second chance at a first impression, and that always stuck with me for like the rest of my life. But I never understood how quickly that first impression can happen, and it's subconscious for people, but it's important to present yourself, in your best way, like you said, authentic, but kind of the best version of yourself really quickly when you're meeting somebody.
Yeah. And if you're really genuinely excited to meet that person, it's going to come off really well. But yeah, short, sweet, 4 seconds. And if you see that person smile back at you, just know you went in the right direction and you're off to a great start. What a great and simple way to start the sales engagement. And boy, nothing in there sounded salesy or like the Wolf of Wall Street. Nothing. It's just super genuine, super easy. But it's recognizing those patterns and the importance of those moments, and you can make the most of them.
No, for sure. Hey, I appreciate it again. Have a good rest of the day, and we'll hopefully talk again soon.